Now, as I said earlier, the regime has been there for 40 years. It is brutal, it is barbaric, it is awful. And yet, there were many that thought, and this started with Obama really, and the British government and the European Union, that we could do a deal with Iran. It's called the Iran nuclear deal. And if we did this, the Iranians would be really good people and they would behave. Many of us thought all we were actually doing was effectively enriching Iran, and that they've used much of that money to spread their network of terror across much of the region. And Donald Trump, when he was president of the USA, broke the Iran nuclear deal, but now it's all back on. Now, we've had some incidents that have taken place, some naval incidents that have taken place, incidents to shipping in the Gulf in the last couple of days. And speaking earlier today, the head of the armed forces, General Sir Nick Carter, said Iran made a big mistake with the attack that they did against Mercer Street vessel last week because, of course, that has very much internationalized the state of play in the Gulf. So quite strong words, coming out from Nick Carter. I'm joined now by the former Director General of the Ministry of Defence, Rear Admiral Chris Parry. Chris, can you just explain to our viewers the two incidents that have taken place in the Gulf in the last few days?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Well, we've had a drone attack on a ship, which has killed 2 people, unfortunately. And we've also had a manned assault on another tanker off Fujairah. In fact, the people who assaulted that tanker left pretty quickly when foreign warships arrived to deal with the situation. But taken together, they're typical of a pattern that we've had over the last couple of years, where the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps have seen a reason to actually get involved in these sort of things.
Yeah, and I mean, we thought we could contain Iran, didn't we? I mean, the whole purpose of the Iran nuclear deal, the whole purpose of America, the European Union, the UK coming together was to try and work with Iran. Is it, I mean, clearly Nick Carter has reached the end of his tether with all of this. Do you think, Chris Parry, that it's possible to work with Iran?
I've never thought it's been possible to work with Iran. I'm one of those people that I suppose is on the hawkish side. Every aspect of Iran's political behaviour leads you to believe they don't intend to be a responsible country in the world. They want to dominate the greater Middle East. There's a confessional issue associated with the bulk of Iran being Shia Muslim against the Sunnis, which surround them. And as you know, they support Hezbollah, Hamas, all the insurrectional movements in and around the greater Middle East. They are not a responsible member of the international community. They've had sanctions imposed on them, but I'm afraid to say that not every country has actually enforced those, notably China. And I think people underestimate the links that have existed ever since the 1980s between China and Iran. China gets quite a lot of its gas from Iran. Most of the white goods and consumer products that Iran has come from China. And people underestimate the extent to which China has Iran's back.
So attacks in the Gulf, hijackings in the Gulf, clearly Iran flexing their muscles. What do we do? Do we make sure there's a naval detachment there? What do we do to try and protect shipping in that vital part of the world?
Nigel, I think what we have to realise is that we're between two regimes in Iran at the moment. Hassan Rouhani was the president. It's now Ibrahim Raisi coming in. And what we have to do is see that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is a state within a state. And they are flexing their muscles. They're trying to show the new regime that they're really hard and they can do lots of stuff. But unless we see the difference between what the state does and what the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps do, we won't actually get the right solutions. Every time they want to get their regime's attention, the IRGC do something like this. They attach limpet mines to ships, they shoot down American drones, they capture British ships. They're trying to get attention. They're trying to say, look, we have political and commercial interests within Iran. And part of this is actually to advance their commercial interests. They're heavily invested in offshore and onshore energy. So think of them really as organized crime. That's how they're operating. These are the Don Corleones of the greater Middle East. And the IRGC, which was set up to help veterans of the Iran-Iraq war, has actually morphed into a vast enterprise at the heart of the Iranian regime. And they essentially say, you better behave yourself, otherwise you're going to see trouble from us. So what we do is we isolate the IRGC with sanctions and other things, and we obviously look out for any aggressive intent from them in order to suppress that and basically separate them from what the Iranians are doing. At the top level, we say to the Iranians, if you want to be treated better, you've got to act better as a responsible partner and deal with the IRGC.
OK, Chris, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And for that to happen, it's going to need the Americans, the EU and the British to sit down and change their position.